I'm Mayor.
I'm Sophie.
Game of Thrones Season 2 Histories and Lore. Now, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we watching these before the season starts or after the season is done? I feel like based on the last one, we should watch them before the whole season starts. We should watch the season 2 lore and then watch season 2.
Right, because I feel like sometimes too, especially with the way like some people be in the comments, it's like they expect us to know things, and I feel like unless we watch the lore, we're not gonna know any of these things. But to me, I think we should still watch it after so we can still have that curiosity going into the show. Cause I don't know, like who will really watch like a pre-episode of an episode? That's basically spoiling, you know?
Well, with that being said, guys, per usual, smash that like button, guys. Join us on our journey to support us to keep these videos going.
And the link is in the description to our Patreon week early access, full-length reactions, movies and shows.
And let's get
right into it.
My brother Robert Baratheon had raised the banners of Storm's End, our ancestral castle, against the mad King Aerys. Jon Arryn of the Vale and Eddard Stark of the North stood with him, and Hoster Tully of the Riverlands would join. But their lands were far from ours, and separated by the combined strength of the West, the Reach, and King's Landing itself. Even Robert's own lords were against him. It was the hardest choice I've ever made, my brother or my king. Blood or honor. Aerys ruled by right of all the laws in Westeros. Everyone knew the price of defiance, but there are deeper, older laws. The younger brother bows before the elder. I followed Robert. Early in the war, Mace Tyrell's indecisive victory at Ashford cut Robert off from Storm's End. Instead of pursuing Robert and risking his record, Mace Tyrell turned east and laid siege to our home. His vast army and navy encircled us and prevented any resupply by land or sea. If a wagon tried to reach us, it was burnt. If a ship tried to land, it was sunk. We were locked in Storm's End to starve, but Robert commanded me to hold the castle no matter the cost. He could ill afford to lose his ancient seat, which had never fallen. While Robert smashed Rhaegar on the Trident, my men ate the dogs, because the horses had already been devoured. While the Lannisters sacked King's Landing, we ate the rats. If the smuggler Davos had not slipped through the Tyrell blockade with his onions, we'd have eaten our own dead. But I held the castle until Lord Eddard remembered us and marched to lift the siege. The Tyrells didn't even put up a fight. And Robert threw a feast to celebrate Lord Eddard's victory. I was sent to the Royal Island stronghold of Dragonstone to deal with Viserys and Daenerys, the last surviving Targaryen children. Before I arrived, however, they escaped across the narrow sea. Robert was furious. He stripped me of Storm's End and gave it to that prancing fool Renly, my younger brother. I could keep Dragonstone. Now Robert is dead, and a bastard pretender soils my throne while the realm fills with schemers and traitors. But the rightful king is coming for them all, and I will not stop until I have scoured this land clean of abomination. The Baratheons say, ours is the fury. I will show them. Fury burns.
Okay, so
listen, y'all.
I mean, I said, listen. I literally remember saying this, and that was Stannis, right?
Yes,
I literally said
Stannis.
He deserves to be king. And remember what I said about how Robert don't even look at his brothers as his brothers? He did give Ned Stark more like approval as compared to his own kin. So my thing about this is just crazy how bad things turn, because the fact that Joffrey isn't even his son is what makes everything worse.
I am sorry, y'all, but I'm just so stuck on the fact of I feel like it would have made so much sense based on just that one part to watch this, then get into season 2, because I feel like it doesn't spoil anything. it leads right off of what we know.
You know what? You know what?
It literally
you
talked
saying
about
that you're
what
right.
we know and
so
didn't even spoil what Stannis did.
You're basically saying
season 2.
watching this before we watch season 2 gives us more of an understanding of the beef.
Yes.
Because we didn't really, like, we kind of knew of the beef, but not really. So now that you're saying that, like, okay, not even just that, too. The fact that he brought up, what's
Ed,
the other family. The ones that he said.
Tyrells.
Yeah. The fact that the Tyrells are actually marrying into Joffrey, and the whole time, he said, like, they was even beneficial. They literally didn't even, like, do anything, like, help the fight. Yeah. So... yeah, I said it. I said Stannis definitely deserves to be king. And Robert was definitely an a-hole.
Yeah.
And Joffrey being king kind of is screwing everything more up. Because they didn't even have to get to this point if they at least let him be king. But they didn't want him. And it's crazy, too, how Robert stripped him of them titles when it wasn't even his fault.
Yeah.
I'm just reiterating because I like to talk. So, but yeah, if you don't have nothing to say, you can just say like, no comment.
In King's Landing, if you leave the Red Keep and aren't careful, you may find yourself in Flea Bottom. In such a cesspool did House Seaworth have its glorious start. I got out as soon as I could, finding work on a smuggler's ship. Soon, every port on the narrow sea had a bounty on me, which they would collect if I didn't pay a percentage to the right people or pick the right tides. You know how to tell a good smuggler? When you talk to one, there's a head that talks back. I was very good. Davos of Flea Bottom had run with orphans and beggars, but Davos the smuggler was received by merchants and lords when nobody would catch them. Oddly, the only honest work came from pirates like the notorious bloodthirsty Salador San. An old friend. All he ever wanted was someone to buy his cargo quickly before the tide left and sell it without telling where I got it. In time, I saved enough to buy a small plot of land and found a woman who was kind enough to overlook my trade. She gave me a son, Mathos. And we dreamt of the traders' circle around the Jade Sea, just one trip and I could settle us and our family for life. Then some Storm Lord revolted against the Iron Throne. Wars are not as good for smugglers as you'd think. Every harbour fills with guards and inspectors, and the seas filled with blockades and pirates paid by each side to prey on the other. Though I had no love for the Mad King, I'd grown up around the power of King's Landing. I figured this Robert Baratheon would end the same as the other rebel lords, burnt to ash. But he didn't. The North, the Riverlands and the Vale joined him. And in the taverns, people drank to Robert's health openly. Brave fools, I thought. But I had a family who'd be left in the cold if I lost my head. When Mace Tyrell marched on Robert's home of Storm's End, I spied the end of the rebellion. The castle was garrisoned by Robert's younger brother Stannis and a small guard, and would not hold out for long. When it fell, Robert would be homeless, and his support would bleed away. This I knew from experience. Months later, Stannis was still holding the castle. Nobody cared. But on voyages, I had seen what famine does, and I thought of all those men in Storm's End who would die unmourned and forgotten. No better than Flea Bottom orphans. I told my wife and myself that I'd get a high price for the onions and salt beef. In truth, I knew I'd be captured by the Tyrell galleys or drowned, but I was too stubborn. Later that night, in the dark, in a tiny boat with a black sail, I cursed myself and the moonlight as I waited for the tide to turn. When it did, the wind beat the sail so hard I ripped it down, fearing the Tyrell ships would hear. Luckily, they'd grown lax. With muffled oars alone, I steered my cargo through the treacherous currents and snarls of rock that give Shipbreaker Bay its name. The waves finally carried me, soaked and near blind from sea water, through the mouth of the cavern beneath the castle. Then, Stannis Baratheon arrived. The siege had left him gaunt, but not weak, never weak. He greeted me and accepted my onions with cool courtesy, betraying no emotion, even as all wept. He doled out the food to his wife and each of his men before he ate himself, a portion no larger than any other. When he finally thanked me, I could see his mind had already returned to the castle's defense. His duty. After Ares fell and Lord Stark lifted the siege, Stannis summoned me. For my salvation of Storm's End, I was to be granted a knighthood, a keep of my own, and my son taken into Stannis' personal service. Davos of Flea Bottom had become Sir Davos of House Seaworth, and his son would serve the king's own brother. But for my previous crimes as a smuggler, I was to have the fingertips of one hand taken off above the highest joint. Stannis held that I had flouted the laws of the land for years, and a good act does not wash out the bad. In one fell swoop, or 5, Stannis gave my son a future and my family a name that I could never have imagined, nor earned on my own. I still keep the finger bones in a bag around my neck, to remind me what I was and what I owed to Stannis. For during my many years as a smuggler, I visited many ports, taverns and back alleys, and saw many things in this world, but never justice. Until Stannis.
Wow.
Yo, why did that feel like that got so deep?
No, right.
Yo, I didn't see. Listen,
you know,
man,
but it makes sense because that's
saying.
why I feel like that's why he act like that with Stannis.
Yes, he was so close to Stannis, and it all makes sense because now that we got that information, I didn't know that. Well, I figured, but he was definitely a low life person, and he did bad things to get where he had to be. But then Stannis swooped him up when he did something good for him, when he didn't have to.
Right. Because
he's seen what basically, you know, y'all heard, but I found it interesting only because that was information that unlike the Stannis and him attacking, that was information that
and now was I
was like, wow,
because
okay.
at first
their
when
relationship
I went
makes sense.
when I seen their relationship,
But
I was like, okay. I mean, I said I can tell like he really f's with him, but like I was kind of trying to see like it has to be a deeper meaning to it, and this just explained it. So
some great houses call us upstarts.
wait, who's this?
The truth is that while the Starks and
okay, the girl.
Yeah.
some great
That's the
houses
younger
call us
brother way.
upstarts. But the truth is that while the Starks and Lannisters fell to the Targaryens in defeat,
The younger brother's wife.
That's Stannis' younger brother, Renly, wife. Yes, it is. Damn, my phone's charging. Look it up. I'm pretty sure Marjorie Tyrell.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they probably wasn't married yet.
Right, because
but
you said it like they was in love and something. I'm like, wait, Renly
Well,
was gay. I was like, what? I was just.
But he
confused.
was with that lady.
Okay.
Or girl, whatever.
Okay, right. I know what you're talking about.
Tyrell rose. For thousands of years, our family served as loyal stewards to the kings of the Reach, until the last of their line unwisely burned to death, resisting the Targaryen invaders. To save the Reach from a similar fate, we yielded the castle of Highgarden to Aegon and his sisters. In gratitude, the Targaryens gave House Tyrell dominion over the Reach, and we became lords of the castle in which, for generations, we had served. Under the Targaryen dynasty, Westeros prospered. Gone were the petty wars of 7 kingdoms and the endless thirst for minor glories that drove them. The Westerlands enriched the realm. The North guarded it. And the Reach and Riverlands fed it. This harmony is what Robert Baratheon shattered with his rebellion against Aerys Targaryen. When the call to arms came, though, we did not want to answer. The Reach is a gentle land, and honestly, the Mad King was not much loved. But we owed peace and status to his family. My father, Mace Tyrell, called his banners and marched north to battle the rogue Stormlord Robert, who had already defeated 3 forces in a single day. And, at Ashford, my father won. Some chastened my father for not pursuing Robert after the battle. We had cut him off from the Stormlands, the seat of his power, and he had fled north, within easy grasp of Lord Tywin Lannister, the Hand of Aerys, for 20 years. My father moved instead to lay siege to Robert's ancestral stronghold of Storm's End. The rose would strangle the stag as the lion pounced. So we waited. But the lion slumbered, and Robert slipped past the king's forces to join Ned Stark. We could have lifted the siege and deployed our armies north to aid the crown. We could have stormed the walls of the castle and made Robert homeless. But we had ample supplies, control of land and sea, and most of all, patience. Our siege would succeed, eventually, at little cost of life to us. If Robert prolonged the war with minor victories, our capture of Storm's End would hasten his downfall. And if Robert won the war, well, it would not do for him to find us in his halls with the bodies of his brother Stannis and his sworn men. When the lion finally showed his colors and purged King's Landing, we knew our cause was lost. My father chose the peaceful route and bent the knee to Robert, who heartily pardoned us. Strange, considering how we'd beaten him and starved his brother to the brink of death. We were to keep our lands, castle and title, but we knew that we would never be welcome at court. It didn't matter. The Reach was still the most fertile of the Seven Kingdoms, and under our hand. Every flower, even the rose, needs pruning. Then it grows strong.
That's so interesting how she talked about that, because I know the Tyrells are apparently one of the more fortunate houses. But I like how she talked about, like everybody else, you hear how bad it was when the Mad King was there. Her, she's like, yeah, we were prospering and, you know, not really like the Mad King.
You know, that's funny how you say,
but it was pretty nice. Right. Like, you know, because it was cool over there. It was cool. The Tyrells was cool.
She was basically saying, but overall, it seemed like everything was functioning better until Robert decided to rebel against. And, that's exactly what I was about to say, too, because I know, like...
I mean, Davos kind of said that, too. He was like,
I know that they
messed up his thing going on.
I know that they keep saying, like, the Mad King was bad, but I feel like the more and more I'm watching it, I don't think that's what it was.
So, because you can't just say bad.
Because, okay, let me say this.
Like, obviously, he wasn't bad.
Jameer, in perspective,
it's just
I feel like
Robert didn't agree with what he did. It's
but not agreeing with someone and then doing all that doesn't solve the problem.
I agree with you.
And then also,
I'm not picking sides. I don't think it's.
I feel like clearly, if Jaime didn't kill him, then he would have still been here, and things would have turned out differently. Which also shows how
the Lannisters were just trying to take their opportunity.
But at the same time, too, to me, it just shows how the Mad King was maybe like more. We don't even know too much about the Mad King, but I feel like you're right. We're always hearing the negative, and this is the first time where you see it in a different aspect and actually show how Robert was maybe kind of dumb. And the only reason why I agree with it is because knowing the way the kingdoms are set up now and how everybody are still fighting within each other clearly shows a problem. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I feel like, I mean, it's not just one person you can blame, but it does have something to do with Robert and his brothers, like him, the way like he treated Stannis, and also the Lannisters. Yeah, they both really play a role.
Tyrells were just really peaceful during this, opposite to the Lannisters, who were trying to get for opportunities. They actually were just patient and peaceful, right, and tried to keep their house as much as possible. It seems like to me.
I think that's why they try to get married to the Lannisters, because they just want their...
They do like a peaceful route. They're like peaceful opportunists.
Yeah.
The Lannisters are action opportunists. Like, they're going to act on it.
Family, duty, honor. Every Tully child learns our words. But I was a woman before I understood them. Years before, my father had taken to foster the son of a wartime friend, a minor lord on the Fingers. The boy had arrived at our castle as Peter Baelish. Due to his home and size,
This is going way back.
Huh. Are you peeping this right now?
Yeah, this is Baelish, and this is how her and him met. And I already knew. You don't
I
remember
had
when
to
they was
pause
talking.
that because that's the first
But
time I've seen that. That's interesting.
But I remember in season 1 when they talked about their love story.
Right, so this is gonna be interesting. That's how they met. Okay, interesting, Baelish.
my brother soon named him Littlefinger. When I came of age, Brandon Stark of Winterfell sought and won my hand. To my father, Brandon was heir to the north and a suitable match for a daughter of House Tully. To me, Brandon was wild and terrifying, never far from laughter or trouble. I loved him with all the fire of a first passion, much I came to realize as Peter loved me. When Peter heard of my engagement, he challenged Brandon to a duel. Peter survived only because I begged Brandon not to kill him.
Oh, wow.
I still thought of Peter as family. Now, I wish I had let him die.
I'm done.
Only days before my wedding, when I thought to be happy forever, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen abducted Brandon's sister, Lyanna.
I knew it, because the whole time I'm like, she's not even married to Brandon Stark. She's married to Ned.
But remember what happened. Brandon Stark is the one who died, and his father died trying to get his sister back.
I know. Yeah.
Dang. See, now this is getting interesting. Even though
and now we know, and this also plays a role too with Robert, because he loved Eddard's sister. That's the one they're probably talking about, right?
Yeah, the sister they stole.
Yeah.
No, I mean we knew that though. I'm just
Yeah.
it's just interesting seeing it from her perspective as
Right.
all. Seeing like Brandon and them being together.
Blooded as always, Brandon immediately rode for King's Landing to demand justice, which the Mad King Aerys Targaryen gave him, in his own twisted fashion. The day the Raven arrived with the news of my Brandon's death, I locked myself in a room and refused to eat for days, until my father reminded me of my duty. I was to marry Eddard, Brandon's younger brother, a man whom I had never met, though of whom none spoke ill,
And that's why she
or spoke anything at all.
And
That's why she told Bran.
Huh?
I mean, oh my god.
That's why she told Rob.
Yeah, I don't know
like,
why I just
listen,
called Brandon. Yeah.
You gotta marry. You may not know them, but you never figure out what's his gonna. You know what I'm saying?
She basically saying like you never know the good that can come along with actually like being with a person, and he made an oath, so he has to keep up to it, and that's why she said that. And also that part
again also proving that watching this before we watch season 2 would have made season 2
and not even just
better.
that. That's also probably
would've
why.
made it better if we watched
You think
this
that's probably
before,
why
but-
he had a kid out with her, like with another person? But he's
Of
John.
course,
Is John and
of
Rob
course.
the same age, or who's the oldest overall? Is it Rob?
John and Rob. Rob is the older. John
Okay.
is like probably slightly younger.
Okay, so he did. I was just making sure like he actually did cheat on her. Okay, because I think that
No, he did.
means something.
No, he did.
Like even though they said like she was just some random whore, I don't know.
No, I don't think she was a random. I'm pretty sure they said she was someone. I don't think she was
Ned.
Yeah, I
Not-
think Ned did something with a woman, not just a random.
So it was
Girl.
someone like he actually had feelings for her.
Our union would cement an alliance of the North, Vale, Stormlands, and Riverlands in rebellion against the Mad King. I was a Tully. I did my duty. We were married quickly and were spared only one night before he had to return to the field. I spent the war by the windows waiting for a raven to hear if my son would grow up fatherless or at all. We knew the price of defeat. I scoured the kitchens and washing rooms for any and all gossip. Robert had won and crushed the Mad King. Robert had lost, but Jaime Lannister was now king. Robert had almost won, but the Mad King had become a dragon and burned King's Landing to ash.
Wow.
At night, I told myself the war would end soon and bring peace. Either a victory or the grave. I was wrong. Robert won, and my husband avenged his brother and my love. But when he came home to me, he could not meet my eyes. I saw the reason by his side.
Oh.
Many men have bastards, I know. And under the strain of war, any man, no matter how honorable, may forsake his vows for a night of warmth that he may never know again. But Ned Stark was not built like other men. His northern honor would not let him sequester his shame in some distant holdfast. He brought this boy, this Jon Snow, home to raise with his true-born children. My children. Yet even these bitter memories are sweet now. They are all I have left of my Ned. Our family is broken and scattered, and our son must wage a war for the pieces. We need to go home. The Starks are of the north, and, like the snows of winter when they come south, they melt away.
Oh, wow. That was so sad.
Yeah, so I feel like she
always keeps saying she does what she has to do. Like, wow, that's
yeah, and
so
I feel
sad,
like
bro.
I feel like honestly, like ever since her true love died, and then also the fact that Ned cheated on her just made everything worse. And I think now it's just kind of like
It keeps getting
we're
worse.
in the situation. I'm just trying to help my kids make the best decision to stay alive.
Right.
I feel like that's
that
what
would have
she's
made us
doing.
understand the decision she made
With Arya.
with Arya and
I
letting
mean, no,
Jaime
for
Lannister
at the end of
go.
the day, I understood it, but in my opinion, I feel like she should have been a little bit more like she should have talked to Rob, and she should have had some information for a fact. Because the thing is, they don't even have Arya, you know.
Yeah.
And then honestly, I don't realistically think. Well, just think about how Baelish was trying to help Sansa go, and she didn't want to leave. So that's why I said I think it was dumb. But yeah. That's really sad.
Oh. This is gonna be interesting because
Dark
they never went in
wings,
depth about
dark
this too
words.
much.
I was only a boy when the Raven came to call my father, Lord Eddard Stark, to another war. Balon Greyjoy had raised the Iron Islands in revolt and burned the Lannister fleet at anchor. King Robert Baratheon again needed his old friend. My mother Catelyn was not happy to lose her lord husband to Robert again. 6 years before, he had left her to avenge his father and brother against the Mad King. But now he had sons and daughters of his own, and, unspoken, another son who wasn't hers. We hold our honor and duty as dear as our old gods. When the time came, my father marched south to restore peace and order to the realm. My father always told me the Iron Islands were a strange and dangerous place. Its people, the Ironborn, keep neither the old gods nor the Seven, and despise all honest toil. Their ancestors ravaged the western shores, raping and slaving and putting it to the torch, and their songs still ring through the halls of the Ironborn, while everywhere else, they're whispered to wayward children at bedtime. Perhaps Lord Balon thought Westeros had not healed from the war against the Mad King, and was as fragmented and suspicious as the ancient kingdoms his forebears had terrorized. Robert's navy corrected him at Fair Isle when they smashed the Proud Iron Fleet. Robert and my father corrected him at Pike, his own castle, when they pulled down his towers and breached his walls. My father never liked to speak of his battles, but from other men I learned what transpired. Thoros of Myr was first through the breach with his flaming sword. Not far behind him was Jorah Mormont of Bear Island, my father's bannerman who earned the knighthood he would later shame, and lords from every corner of the Seven Kingdoms.
I'm listening.
No. Jorah Mormont?
Yeah, that's the one that's with Daenerys.
Really?
Yes, that's his name.
I know, but wow, that's interesting.
No, he said how he was sent over to
Wait, I gotta hear that again.
My father never liked to speak of his battles, but from other men I learned what transpired. Thoros of Myr was first through the breach with his flaming sword. Not far behind him was Jorah Mormont of Bear Island, my father's bannerman who earned the knighthood he would later shame, and lords from every corner of the Seven Kingdoms. All day, through every passage in the castle, they fought side by side, my father with our ancestral sword Ice, and King Robert with his warhammer against a horde of axe-wielding Ironborn. In the end, Lord Balon bent the knee. King Robert generously allowed Lord Balon to retain his title and castle. The price of peace was custom. The only son of Balon's to survive his foolish rebellion would be taken as a hostage against future treasons. My father even volunteered to foster the boy himself, I suspect, to make Theon Greyjoy a different man than his father, who would bring honor and duty to the Iron Islands when he returned as heir. So my mother's silent fear came true, and my father returned with another child. Theon ate with us, played with us, and fought with us. Once the great bond between my father and Robert Baratheon united the realm against the Mad King and brought him to justice for his crimes. Now, another monster sits on the Iron Throne, and another debt of blood is owed my family. Theon is my murdered father's ward. I am my murdered father's son. Like my father and Robert, bound in blood, if not by blood, we are brothers.
Interesting.
Well, the thing is...
Sorry to tell you, Rob, but Theon kind of...
Theon, like I said, I feel like he's definitely.
See, man, this is why. Listen, guys,
I feel like the Starks definitely. But the crazy thing is, I knew the Starks like.
Yeah.
I knew Ned wasn't going to treat Theon like his parents was doing because he was a little kid, and that's why they treated him as their own. So, but like I said, you gotta think about it. Theon realizing how his family viewed him,
okay, well,
it's going to impact him more.
Let's see Theon's view real quick, and then we'll talk about both.
Okay.
I want to see his point of view.
Okay.
Of how he thought the rebellion went.
When Aegon and his dragons burned Harren the Black and all his sons at Harrenhal, the days when men feared the sight of our longships were over. Aegon would not permit marauders and raiders in his 7 kingdoms. With Harren died our empire, and the old way that forged it. But what is dead may never die. 6 years after Robert Baratheon won his crown, my father, Balon Greyjoy, sought to restore our ancient rights. He declared the Iron Islands independent, and himself its king, and sent the Iron Fleet in a daring raid on Lannisport where they burned the Lannister ships at anchor, making us unchallenged in the Sunset Sea. This was the seed of our undoing. My eldest brother Roderick led a frontal assault on Seaguard, a town built to protect the mainland from us. After ferocious fighting beneath the city walls, he was slain by Lord Jason Mallister and his men defeated. By this time, Stannis Baratheon had brought Robert's fleet around Westeros and somehow managed to trap the Iron Fleet at Fair Isle, smashing it. Robert's victory was now all but assured, yet we made him bleed for each island. Stannis Baratheon captured Great Wick, the largest of the Iron Islands, and Ser Barristan Selmy himself subdued Old Wick. Robert and Lord Eddard Stark led the main assault against the island of Pike. They razed the town of Lordsport to the ground before Robert turned his full fury on our family's stronghold. When they breached the walls, the first through was Thoros of Myr with his ridiculous flaming sword, followed by every minor lord of Westeros hungry for glory. My other brother Maron was killed when the siege engines brought down a tower on his head. I was now my father's only living son, and heir to the Iron Islands. When my father saw his cause was lost, he wisely conceded defeat to Robert, who otherwise would have pulled down our castle stone by stone with us in it. As my father said to me then, no man has ever died from bending his knee. He who kneels may rise again, blade in hand. He who will not kneel stays dead, stiff legs and all. As it stands, Robert allowed my father to keep his lands and title as Lord of the Iron Islands, King of Salt and Rock, Son of the Sea Wind, Lord Reaper of Pike, for a price. his last son and heir shipped off to Winterfell as an honoured guest. I would eat at the Stark's table and play with the Stark children. And if my father rebelled again, Lord Eddard Stark would take his sword and cut off my head. It would be his duty.
No, I'm not surprised, because this is still not putting it on anybody but Theon's dad.
Yeah.
Because, listen, I get it, right? I'm taking your son, but I'm only taking your son
like his dad,
because clearly you didn't want peace.
I feel like his dad emotionally manipulated him, if you get where I'm coming from.
That's what I'm saying.
Because him coming back, right.
He wanted to keep it cool and wanted to keep his son. He wanted to try to take advantage like they did years ago because he thought everything was in shambles. He clearly didn't want peace, so they retaliated. I don't like the fact, I don't want to think of the fact of Robb and Ed and Ned just went over there and did that for no reason. They didn't. It's because his dad is the one who started, who thought they wanted to be all big and bad and go over there. I'm not picking sides, but that was a dumb decision to do that. Now you deal with the repercussions of your son being, yes, a prisoner, and if you do that again, he's gonna die. I'm not but I'm not sitting here and gonna say I don't expect Theon to be mad, because I get it. He was a kid, he doesn't understand, and now he feels like he's like, oh, my head's gonna be, you know what I'm saying? So I get that, because I already know, I feel like that's what you're gonna say. I get that. I don't think Theon's wrong about also, feeling that way.
But also the metaphor,
he has a right, but
also the metaphor, what he said that his dad did, basically kneeling allows you to stay alive, and not kneeling makes you a dead man. Mm-hmm. So that's why, to me, it's like them retaliating right now clearly means like y'all want to be dead. Y'all should have just kept it how it was, you know? Mm-hmm. Yep. But I get it. People always feel like, you know, his dad feels like he's supposed to reign over. I get it, you know? But it's like you're still risking a whole bunch of things. I mean, the more and more I'm watching this is that I realize even with the amount of power that people have, they want more. Like, being a lord isn't as tough as being a king. And that's why I feel like, in my perspective, I'm looking like, all right, but you already have this and that, like, why want more? But there's people who's really stern in them thinking they deserve something and they're going to go for it. I feel like Theon should have still never acted out of character, because now it is gonna, like, it is gonna definitely affect him. So you can't do no take back now.
Stannis we're at the end.
Though Robert had risked all our lives to win it, the Iron Throne bored him. He cared little for justice and less for rule. If it weren't women or wineskin, he had no use for it. Without the stalwart Jon Arryn as Hand of the King, the challenge to Robert's crown would have come much earlier than it did. The Iron Islands have never lacked for treachery. They respect only strength, and honor is as foreign to them as the Seven. After 6 years, their ruler, Lord Balon Greyjoy, wagered that King Robert had not won the support of the great houses of Westeros, many of whom still named him usurper. Lord Balon declared the Iron Islands independent and sent his Iron Fleet to Lannisport. Lord Tywin Lannister was careless, and the Ironborn caught and burnt his ships at anchor. Lord Balon and his reavers controlled the Sunset Sea. Robert then ordered me to succeed where his father-in-law, Lord Tywin, had failed. Beneath Robert's fury, I sensed relief. War he could understand. He would smash Lord Balon as he had Rhaegar. I raised Robert's fleet and sailed around Westeros to the Iron Islands. I set a trap for the Iron Fleet off Fair Isle. As sailors and warriors, the Ironborn are unparalleled. But they're not soldiers. They have no discipline, no strategy, no unity. In a battle, each man fights only for his own glory, and their longships are built for lightning strikes and shore raids. When the captains rushed in, I smashed their longships with our larger war galleys. The strength of the Ironborn is in their ships. With the Iron Fleet broken, I had assured Robert's victory. He could now transport troops and siege weapons to invade the Iron Islands. And contrary to Balon's hopes, Robert had plenty of both. I've never seen such allegiance as Robert could inspire in war. Enemies who tried to kill him one day would be drinking with him the next under their own fallen banners. In rebelling against the Iron Throne, Lord Balon did more than Robert ever could to cement his rule. When Robert came to the Iron Islands, he brought with him the full power of Westeros. Sir Barristan Selmy of the King's Guard led the assault on Old Wick, while I subdued Great Wick, the largest of the Iron Islands. But Robert saved the seat of House Greyjoy, Pike, for himself and Lord Eddard. Robert would later boast of the battle's bloodiness and how he could have torn down the island into the waves if Lord Balon hadn't bent the knee. But if I'd have led the assault, Balon's neck would have bent, under his sword. Because I do not forget, I do not pardon. His time will come. All their times will come.
So Stannis was like, yeah, listen, brother, you I know you're like Warren, you good at it, but I would have killed him. I would never even look the other way. I would have destroyed their whole thing.
Right.
That's crazy.
I also found it interesting how he was talking about like Robb in a way where it's like Robert used all these people for the war, but the only people who benefited from it was him, the Lannisters, and Ned. And I think that's why now everybody in general has this idea of wanting to be their own king.
I mean, of course. That's definitely a
but
fact.
Yeah, definitely Theon dad, he be drawing like
Balon. I mean, listen, we said that, but that's simple. Balon made a mistake. I don't think that was a smart decision.
And he made a second one by what he allowed in season 2.
Right, yeah. By basically manipulating Theon in a way.
I mean,
he did, because he was like, you know where, like, come on.
He manipulated them, but I think Theon always had that energy. I think if you want to be honest, Theon was happy to go back. I say he did emotionally. I say he definitely did.
What did you always say? What did you always say? You was like, Theon, he wants his father's.
Oh yeah, approval.
Come on.
Yeah, he do want his father's approval.
I guarantee if Balon was like, nah. We just want peace, son. I'm happy you're home. Theon would have sat there and be like, okay.
You're right, yeah.
He would be like, you know what? You're right.
You're right. No,
he would have sat his behind right there.
Right.
He would have never even went over to the to the north.
House Tyrell trace our descent to Garth Greenhand, the legendary first king of the Reach who made the land bloom. But so too does every noble house around us. It seems dear ancestor Garth planted as many flowers as he plucked. For over 1,000 years, the Greenhand sons and grandsons ruled the Reach as House Gardener. The offshoots of his daughters grew into vast and powerful houses in their own right, except for House Tyrell. We chose instead to serve our Gardener cousins faithfully as stewards, to manage their stronghold of Highgarden and the daily affairs of the Reach. Our words are growing strong. And under our stewardship, the Reach did just that. As did we. Until a blundering king almost cost us everything. Aegon Targaryen had landed in Westeros. King Mern allied us with the Rock to repel the upstart's army. One can only marvel that King Mern did not reconsider when he saw the living dragons against him. Perhaps he should have sought counsel from his trusted stewards before he set out. Then again, perhaps he did.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
And let us not forget his sisters. Burnt the combined armies of the Reach and Rock. King Mern paid for his misjudgment with his life and that of his ancient family. In a day, the Reach had lost its king, its ruling house, and most of its army. Thankfully for everyone, my ancestor, Harlan Tyrell, had better sense. Until the Maesters sorted out the entail among Mern's cousins, Harlan the Steward was acting Lord of Highgarden. To ensure peace and life in the Reach, he would yield the castle to Aegon. The other castles and families would then follow, as they had since the Dawn Age. Aegon had a continent to conquer, and the fertile Reach was too valuable to raze. He accepted Harlan's proposal and welcomed our lands into his kingdom. To show his gratitude, Aegon entitled Harlan to Highgarden, the castle his family had served for 1,000 years, and made House Tyrell his wardens of the south, choosing us over older, greater families in the Reach. Our house thus owed everything to the Targaryens. So is it any wonder we stayed true to King Aerys, even during his madness, and even after Robert Baratheon rebelled? Some may question my father for laying siege to the Baratheons' home, instead of marching to aid Prince Rhaegar before Robert could kill him and scatter the royal army. But let us not forget that we had already dealt Robert his only defeat of the war at Ashford. If Lord Tywin Lannister had not vanquished the Mad King so suddenly, our siege would have destroyed Robert's home and his brothers, and won the war for Aerys. But when the Targaryens fell, House Tyrell again chose peace and prosperity over war and devastation, and bent the knee to King Robert Baratheon, first of his name. We returned to Highgarden to manage the affairs of the Reach, as we had for thousands of years, and will for 1,000 more. Other great houses take lions and wolves for their sigils, and draw their power from the gold in their mountains or the cold of their winters. But mountains run dry, winter yields to spring, and the rose blooms once more.
Yeah.
So I feel like
she's saying no matter what, we always gonna be here, because we not making no listen, I like the Tyrells because they don't make dumb decisions.
Basically,
they listen. Oh, I'm taking over. I got dragons. Okay.
Right.
I'm rebelling. I'm king. I'm Robert Baratheon. I kill Targaryens that you were close to. What are you gonna do now? Nothing. I'm cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that. It seems like they kind of like they just look at it in a better aspect, but also it's funny how she said how they killed the Mad King so suddenly, which is the reason why I said, you know what I'm saying?
That was sudden, because then they would have.
She was saying even then they still didn't go the route of doing war, because what would be the point of that? So I think the Tyrells, they are pretty, like, at first it seemed like they're kind of just going with the flow, but now that you think about like them, imagine they were to be prideful and just went about the way that it would just be causing more problems.
And they get that, I feel like, because of how they were brought upon. They were stewards first. They weren't even lords. They weren't even kings.
You're right.
They were listening to a king, and then they made a smart decision that led to them being who they are now. So they're gonna keep making smart decisions, and then they're making another one as this season is going on by marrying Joffrey, because he's
they're just trying to get peace.
They trying to get power the right way. I feel like the less cautious way. Marrying Joffrey now they're gonna have a queen that's a queen of the kingdoms in the Tyrell house. Like, bro, I mean, hey. But who knows?
I mean, honestly, I think that's why even when she was with Renly, she was acting like that. Even though she like he didn't really like her, she didn't let that be a reason why she wasn't going to be with him, or like or expose him and stuff like that.
She was like, "Oh, it's okay." Like, they're so nonchalant about things.
Right.
They're like, "Oh, it's okay." Oh, okay. Oh, goodness. These two.
Now they both going to be talking.
These two.
Where the North has its honor and the South its chivalry, the Iron Islands has its strength.
We call us...
The Iron Islands get on my nerves.
They do get on my nerves.
Like, they're so annoying.
They seem like savages.
Unlike their mainland cousins, the first men of the Iron Islands never bowed to the old gods.
Theirs was the drowned god.
who made the Ironborn to reave and sack and write their names in salt, steel, and song, that his enemy, the Storm God, could not wash away. We raised our kings from our own ranks, and used beaten foes as thralls to work our mines and farm our land.
Or as salt wives, if a woman was pretty enough.
That is like ridiculous, the way he just said that.
When Aegon came demanding fealty, King Harren the Black ruled as far east as the Trident.
Other kings like the Starks could kneel, but Harren was Ironborn, and the Ironborn must be beaten. In Harrenhal, he had the mightiest castle in Westeros, and the army to defend it.
But Aegon did not intend a siege. He mounted his dragon and roasted Harren and all his sons in their tower, and the Old Way with them. Because of Harren's defiance, Aegon pushed the Ironborn back to our islands and gave the Riverlands to the Tullys. But he did allow the Ironborn to choose who would lead them.
House Greyjoy had always been one of the greatest houses of the Iron Islands. We trace our descent from the Age of Heroes and the legendary Grey King, who took a mermaid to wife and made war upon the Storm God for 1,000 years.
Blessed by the Drowned God, the Grey King fought and slew Naga, the great sea dragon, and took her fire for his own.
This history made our ancestor Vickon Greyjoy the natural choice to lead the Ironborn after Aegon's conquest. For 300 years, House Greyjoy ruled the Ironborn. We styled ourselves Lord of the Iron Islands, King of Salt and Rock, Son of the Sea Wind, Lord Reaper of Pike.
In truth, we were thralls. Our people still chanted, "What is dead may never die." But the Old Way had died.
Until the Targaryens followed their dragons into the grave, and our Lord Father, Balon Greyjoy, rose against the new king, Robert Baratheon. He seized our ancient crown and sent our Iron Fleet against the Lannisters at Lannisport, burning all their ships before any could weigh anchor.
Though Robert and Eddard Stark would later defeat him, they understood us no better than Aegon. The Greyjoy sigil is the Kraken. What it grasped once, it will never surrender.
What is dead may never die, but rises again, harder and stronger.
Wow. Interesting. You know what? Let me say that. Okay, go ahead. Because I've been talking first. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I still don't think they're gonna win. Like, they can do all that, but I don't think they stand a chance against.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like the idea that they're Krakens because like once they get a hold of you, blah blah blah, they're this. They have a very strong mindset. They have a very ignorant mindset as well, because some would say, "Oh, they're really strong and they're not gonna back down." But there's times where you gotta be Tyrells and you gotta listen sometimes.
Right, like look at it in a.
You gotta look all around. But right. They have but they remind me. They have such a.
They're very revengeful.
Revengeful, yeah, strong-willed. So I will say this: I like that because if they do get a lot of power, it's over.
I don't know, because I think
if they get a big army, I think they act,
but I think they act off of emotion.
That's why they're That's why you call them they're like savagery. But I'm saying it's over because they're relentless. Like so. It's basically whenever they attack is like it's bad, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
so imagine they did get a bigger army.
But they're bringing this attack upon themselves.
Of course,
the crazy thing is, wasn't Daenerys gonna go over there anyway? She was gonna attack them anyway, but they was not gonna beat that dragon.
Yeah, I know, right? Listen, I say all that, but still, the Iron Islands, y'all still make dumb decisions. Yeah. They do. Like sometimes y'all just need to, because if anything, to me is like, okay, I get it, y'all revengeful, but they choose the worst time. Like, why would you attack?
I feel like it's about the way they go about it. At least try to compromise first. And then threaten.
Or be like the Lannisters. Take advantage and then stab them in the back when he's not even noticing. They're just going straight forward.
That's why I said I don't think they're going to win. Because when it comes down to winning a fight, it's not about strength. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. All right.
So.
What the... These are knights.
Honor, glory, lies to make idiot boys want knighthood, and idiot girls spread their legs for it. Let me tell you what makes a knight. Killing. Either enough men or the right man. House Clegane should know. We're very good at both. Most families claim some great ancestor so far back that nobody can prove them liars. Not us. My grandfather kept the kennel for Lord Titus Lannister of Casterly Rock, the father of Lord Tywin. Lord Titus was a weak man who didn't know it. One day while hunting, he stumbled on a lioness. Instead of embracing the man who wore her on his banners, she tried to tear out his throat. Lucky my grandfather came up with the dogs and drove the big cat away. As a reward, the Cleganes got lands and a keep and a son to squire for the Lannisters. We took the 3 hounds who died for them as our new sigil. When Tywin Lannister became Lord of Casterly Rock, he wanted more from his former kennel master than fealty. He bet that training hounds to kill isn't far from training boys to kill. In just 2 generations, my brother Gregor and I proved him right. I gutted my first man at 12. Years after, servants started disappearing in our keep, and even a sister I don't remember. But nobody could prove anything against Gregor, or dared if they caught him at it. For my father wanted a knight in our family, and thought he'd found one in Gregor, who at 13 towered over enough men that they called him the Mountain. Sure, Gregor looks quite the champion from a distance, but a mountain can't cleave a man in half with one blow, and won't break a wench's face if she talks. Through Lord Tywin's influence, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen kindly anointed my brother personally. A great honor for our family, everyone said. 1 year later, Sir Gregor chivalrously sacked the prince's city, brained the prince's baby, and raped and murdered the prince's wife, winning our family yet more honor from the new king and queen. Soon after, my father died. They say in a hunting accident. The same day that Gregor became lord of the Clegane lands, gold and anything under his roof, I left our home to take service at Casterly Rock. Lord Tywin is not like his father. Neither is King Joffrey, or the likes of me would never be on the King's Guard, with all those true knights. Between them, a man who serves the Lannisters will never lack for killing. I'll guard this king, such as he is. Gregor will kill the other ones, such as he does. When we're done, we'll see how many people still believe in songs and fairy tales.
I'm done, but whoa. Gregor Clegane? I don't think we know who that is.
That was his brother.
Yeah, but we don't know who it is.
A long time ago, they say, some old southern king enslaved our giants by magic and forced them to build your famous wall. Then he kicked all of my kind to the other side and raised an army to keep us there. And we're the uncivilized ones. Wildlings. Might be Sir King was wise. Even a giant can be made to kneel, but only if he wants a better crack at your head. The free folk don't follow a man because his father tells us. If the king's son was brave and strong, aye, we'd follow him as we did his father. If he wasn't... But it seems to me, as much as the wall keeps us out, it keeps you southerners in. You follow laws you didn't make. Kneel to kings you didn't choose, and pray to gods you never hear from. Traders talk about your 7. Beyond the wall, the stars shine bright and clear. Any gods there aren't listening to the likes of men. Our gods are of the forest, in the trees that shelter us and the rivers that feed us. They gave the land for all of us to share. We fish, farm, and hunt where we will, when we need. If a man wants a woman, he has to prove he'll give her strong and cunning sons. Now, it's easy. When she tries to slit his throat, he don't let her. With the free folk, you get what you can take, and you keep what you can hold. No more. I wonder, even if my kind didn't hop over your wall, would he still set your Night's Watch to guard it? You Southerners are rich. You always have more steel, gold, and daughters. I think you're afraid. If you've always knelt, you don't know what freedom is. And if you've not been beyond the wall, you don't know what fear is. You will.
Why they make her John so creepy?
Yeah. Okay, well, let her finish this
Right.
first.
Swords in the darkness. Aye. The Black Brothers of the Night's Watch are that, at least. As too many of the free folk know. You Southerners are strange. A man murders, and you train him to kill better. A man thieves or rapes, and you send him where it's dark and private. Well, at least you make him promise to be good. Well, then you make him regret even that. From the time he's woken to the time he's allowed to sleep, he walks the frozen wall, carries frozen stones, or boils frozen food. When he lies down at night, he can't have nobody to warm his frozen bed. Well, not unless the crows like to nest together. Do you think he remembers the stories they told him then? About when the White Walkers woke in the land of Always Winter, and how the Wall and the Night's Watch were raised to stop them the next time. Never mind trapping us on the other side. We free folk have our stories too. About how one of your king crows found something cold in the woods, with bright blue eyes. How he brought her home through your wall and declared himself Night's King. 13 years he and his queen ruled over his brothers, making sacrifices as black as their cloaks. Lucky for you Southerners, the free folk rallied to a king beyond the wall, as we will when need be, and marched on the ancient castle he'd taken for his own, the Night Fort. With the help of the Starks, we killed the demon and cleansed your precious watch. And then they thanked us and kicked us back across the wall.
Right.
As you always have. Gendel, Raymond Redbeard, the Horned Lord, each chosen as a king beyond the wall, each promising victory. And all falling to the Night's Watch and the Starks. But this time is different. Our new king knows your tricks. You called him a brother crow once, but you never forgot his wings. We know how you think. We know where you're weak. Watch for us from your wall if you like. With the cold, you won't even feel the blade slip into your back.
Oh crap. Dang,
Wow.
oh, I accidentally clicked off of it. Dang, guys.
Get back on it.
That's pretty interesting.
Well, I feel like I said something about that.
About her?
I said something about how the fact that, okay, based off perspective, the way the show set it up, how they're on the other side of the wall.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
then,
but we knew that though. It's just a wall, and like they make it seem like the people on the other side of the wall in the north are like crazy. Well, I don't even like the name wildlings. They're just other free folk. That's what she said. You know, I don't like it. I just feel like they're just trying to separate them for no reason, only because I feel like if they did try to make peace, it would probably be better, but now it's too late.
Well, I was thinking about what she was saying about the magic and everything. Remember what I was saying about the White Walkers?
Well, yeah, we know that's over there, but I don't know what that has to do with the free folk, like, because they said the Starks and them got together to slay the demon. So clearly, I don't think the magic and the free folk are working together like how we think they are.
I don't know. I feel
But
like
you
it's
think they
something
do?
like that.
You think
I
they
think
are
it, I
working
think
together?
it's something like that. Yeah.
It could be. I don't think they are.
Nobody knows why the Targaryens first came to the island of Dragonstone. Old Valyria was then at the height of its power and the center of the civilized world, which ended at the Narrow Sea. Westeros was a filthy backwater with 7 kings squabbling over borders and minor glories. So much for progress. The island itself was and is nothing. It had no gold or gems to lure Valyrian nobility. All it has is rock. Mostly a shiny black stone, too brittle for war and too sharp for building. The Targaryens called it dragonglass. I call it useless. But the Targaryens managed to raise a castle here. Simpletons claim they used ancient Valyrian sorcery, forgetting that the Targaryens brought a small army with them from Essos. There's no magic in strong backs, though admittedly the castle is unlike any in Westeros. Foreign and strange. If the Targaryens ever regretted their barren outpost and longed for the comforts of home, the doom made their folly permanent. Valyria collapsed into the waves and was no more. To look east was to see the ruin of their homeland, the greatest civilization before or since. But to look west, as Aegon realized, was to see a fertile land ripe for conquest. Perhaps even a new Valyria. Though good for little else, Dragonstone was the perfect staging point for Aegon's invasion of Westeros. The Blackwater Bay granted easy access to the continent. The lands there were disputed by 3 kingdoms, the Reach, the Iron Islands, and the Stormlands. But their capitals were far enough away that none could mount a force before Aegon got a foothold, even if their kings had been able to stop bickering over whose problem he was. Then it was too late. Aegon had chosen his first camp well, with the bay to the east, the river to the south, and open fields to the north and west. His army would be impossible to take by surprise. A perfect site for an invasion, and one day, his capital city, King's Landing. The Doom had taught the Targaryens the prudence of refuge. After the conquest, Dragonstone became the seat of the crowned prince and heir to the Iron Throne. It would serve them well, and me ill, 300 years later, after my brother Robert Baratheon rebelled against the Iron Throne and the Lannisters slaughtered the Mad King Aerys and his royal family. Robert dispatched me to deal with the last surviving Targaryen children. But before I arrived, a loyal knight smuggled them across the Narrow Sea to safety. Hatred for the Targaryens blinded Robert. Unjustly, I was blamed and stripped of our family's castle of Storm's End and given Dragonstone in its stead. Over the years, whenever I demanded my rights restored, Robert would remind me of the island's royal pedigree and pretend he was doing me honor, as if I were one of his tavern girls to be so easily deceived and dismissed. But Robert is dead, and I, Stannis Baratheon, am the rightful king of Westeros.
I'm done.
Let the usurpers and traitors sit on the Iron Throne. From Dragonstone, I will be the dagger at their throat.
It's interesting that that's where he's at, but it was basically the same story as the beginning one.
Right.
We know what he's trying to do, and I mean, the only difference was that now he's the one at Dragonstone. But okay.
Yeah. I don't got much to say about that one.
On the shores of the God's Eye, due north of the Isle of Faces, rises a monument to arrogance and cruelty. Harrenhal. For a people who prided themselves on their ships, the Iron Men of old seized any chance to leave them and carved out a vast kingdom from the peaceful river lords. The Empire reached its zenith under King Harrenhal, called the Black by those he terrorized and by his own men, though they meant it proudly. King Heron enslaved the Riverlands to raise the mightiest fortress Westeros had ever seen. A castle that could garrison 1 million men, with walls so vast that winters would come and go, and besieging armies grow old and grey before the castle fell. 5 towers he ordered, reaching into the heavens like grasping fingers. A monstrosity which he forced our people to build for their own subjugation. But the very day the slaves laid the last stone, Aegon Targaryen and his sisters arrived in the south. When they arrived with their small army, Heron laughed and shut the gates. Harrenhal would have its first test, and an easy one at that. It failed.
Yeah.
Harrenhal could have withstood an assault from all the armies in Westeros combined. But Heron learned that the tallest and thickest walls meant little to dragons, for dragons fly. With Heron and his sons dead, Harrenhal quickly surrendered to Aegon. House Tully then raised the River Lords in rebellion against the Iron Islands, and with Aegon we flushed the Iron Men to the sea. We should have torn down the castle stone by stone then, but Harrenhal seemed such a magnificent prize that Aegon gave it to one of his commanders, whose line then withered to extinction, as would every family to hold it thereafter. When many speak of Harrenhal, their voices drop to whispers about Mad Lady Lothson, who was said to send a giant bat to collect children for her crockpots, and to bathe in blood and serve feasts of human flesh. About the ghosts of Black Heron and his sons who still walk the castle at night, all aflame. Of the servants who went to bed in full health and were found in the morning, burnt to ash. Mere stories to frighten wayward children and excite young girls, you may say. You would not be entirely wrong. Harrenhal is a prize. A nigh impregnable castle with enough land and enough income to make a man, at a stroke, one of the greatest lords in Westeros. But you would not be entirely right either. Say by a king's grace, Harrenhal became yours. Now you must garrison it. You must repair it and maintain it. Even stretched to the ends of your means, you cannot fill and manage the whole castle. So you retreat your household to 4 of the 5 towers, then 3, then 2, then only the bottom thirds of those. You close the whole of 100 hearths and take your meals in your rooms. Even then you can't shake the feeling of desolation, that Harrenhal and its vastness is devouring you. In later years, as you bury a grandson or a great-grandson, the last of your line, you will know it has.
Dang. What the heck?
That was new. I feel like I mean,
that was just history on Harrenhal, which is terrible.
But I'm saying I don't really from what I remember, I don't think they really went in depth about that in the second season. I don't remember hearing about it. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting.
But also knowing that when it comes down to them with the dragons, I mean, what can you really... And, you know, that's probably why he was the king for so long, because he had those dragons. Like, how can you defeat dragons?
That's why Daenerys... She's going to be the queen of the Seven Kingdoms.
And you know what's crazy? Because even though this is, like, looking into the future, but, like, we heard of House of Dragons. That's the series after this, but I know that it's supposed to be a prequel to Game of Thrones. So I find it interesting because when I think in longevity what's going to happen in Game of Thrones, there's no way that Daenerys isn't going to somehow get back on top. Okay. And I feel like House of Dragon is like how basically the Targaryens fell, and Game of Thrones is how she rises back up. Because I don't know, something about having those dragons, that's like, you can't do anything about that, you know? That's just my analogy on it. Oh, there you go.
At its height, the Valyrian freehold ruled over half the known world. Not bad for former shepherds, but the doom fell on them and sank their capital into the sea. Now Volantis is the ember of old Valyria,
ensuring its flame does not go out from this world, as any Volantine will tell you. Pentoshi say the same about Pentos, Lycines about Lys, and so on. But after enough time in the 9 free cities, it's hard to see them as anything but ashes of glory. Volantis is the oldest, the first colony of Valyria. After the Doom, the Volantines tried to rebuild the Empire under their rule. They failed. Not least because the last Valyrian with dragons, Aegon Targaryen, entered the war against them. Now they are content to dominate only their lower classes, or so they say. Braavos is the strangest, a city erected not by the Freehold, but against it. A labyrinth of illusion and deceit to hide the refugees from Valyria's slave lords. After the Doom, the city emerged from the shadows to become one of the greatest banking centers in the world. A man can get anything in Braavos, for a price. Especially death. Your own if you offend one of the swaggering swordsmen that pollute the city. Or, if you're very rich, or very desperate, anyone else's. Lys is the easiest of the free cities, full of pleasure houses catering to every taste, no matter how peculiar. Many men lose themselves in Lys and are never found, at least alive. When a man runs out of coin, the Lycines may grant him their other speciality on the house: poison. Pentos is the most ruthless. The Magisters make a great show of choosing the Prince of Pentos from the great families and granting him the powers of trade, justice, and war, as long as he checks with them first. On the new year, to bring good fortune to Pentos, this prince must deflower the Maid of the Field and the Maid of the Seas. I confess I don't know how each is chosen, or what becomes of them after serving their purpose. But if a crop should fail or a war be lost, the Magisters will slit the prince's throat and choose another. Okay. The other free cities are known for what they make. Mia has its lenses and finery, Norvos, its axes, Quohor, its smiths who can reforge Valyrian steel, Tyrosh, its colors. I'm sure Lorath adds something to the world, but I can't think of it. Frankly, the 9 of them are more alike than they would care to admit. They hire the same soldiers to fight the same wars for the same rulers, the rich, be they called Magisters, Archons, or what have you. When a Dothraki Khalasar approaches, they gift the same tribute to avoid the same sacking. For thousands of years, the disgraced of Westeros have drained east to pool in the free cities, where a man of honor counts for less than nothing, unless it raises his price. Better men than I have learned that what a man sells for gold, he can never buy back. He must earn it, by fire and blood.
The heck? What the heck?
Well, I feel like that was something new too.
That was definitely something new. What the heck is that, bro? The free cities, bro. I don't even know where the free cities are at.
Yeah,
I missed something. I don't know where the free cities are at, because he's talking about it was in Westeros, but clearly that's where Jorah Mormont was at. But well, yeah, this is familiar.
Qarth has always and only belonged to the Qartheen. We were never part of Valeria's empire, nor have we ever fallen to a Dothraki horde. Our walls and the red waste outside them guard us from such annoyance. Many call the approach to our city the Garden of Bones. It needs little tending to grow. Our city, however, would be quite a prize for any empire. Qarth straddles 2 worlds, a greedy and curious west, and a rich and mysterious east. The marvels of Yiti and Ashai pass through our markets, and share berths with the riches of the free cities and Westeros. Our ports have fulfilled many a trader's dreams, almost as many as they have broken. We call Qarth the greatest city that ever was or will be. An easy claim to make if one knows only the docks and customs houses of other cities. An easy lie to swallow if a people see only the gold and jewels of their rulers, which we...
That is so crazy.
Because I'm not gonna lie,
the free cities obviously is not part of Westeros.
But it's funny because I actually when they first kept talking about how, oh yeah, this is one of the best cities, yada yada yada.
They tricked me.
I actually had a feeling that it's no way, because to me, if foreigners are coming to my country, why would I keep putting in their face that we're the richest city and we're the best city? Yeah. Clearly that's a forefront to make them feel like, oh, maybe they should wanna make some alliances with you, because that's exactly what they was doing with Daenerys. Yeah. So even after the fact, when she locked him in that room, and then Jorah was like, all of it is fake, and she was like, take it anyway. Like, it was just all a forefront. I mean, clearly they're good enough. Like, when I say good enough, clearly their society is at a level where it does look nice.
It looks nice, but
they're not as powerful
as you think.
Right. They just, they bribe
The 13 who govern the city are careful to ensure. The proud Qartheen shook off the yoke of unjust kings long ago, so they are told at festivals by the pureborn, the king's direct descendants who have controlled the 13 ever since. Only now, instead of scepters, they use ships. A merchant only remains on the 13 until the others are no longer afraid to deny him, or too afraid to deny his replacement. Except for the warlocks, they alone hold a hereditary seat, a relic from when they had powers, or at least from when the world was younger and more easily duped. Over the years, we have developed an understanding with them. They shall always be welcome on our councils and at affairs of state, provided they never come.
God bless you.
Rare is the civic problem that can be solved by cryptic nonsense and shade of the evening. Thankfully, they need little encouragement to confine themselves to their House of the Undying. Yet perhaps we Qartheen are too confined ourselves. We feel safe behind our walls and our laws, which no visitor can hope to follow, and by which any citizen who vouches for a guest always pays with his life. But like a ship in the summer seas, a city grows becalmed without fresh wind. The greatest city that ever was or will be? An epitaph. I would prefer the greatest city that is.
So but the crazy thing is, I see what they're doing, and it is smart.
It's a freaking facade.
Basically.
Anybody that comes in here, you're gonna die eventually. We're keeping our people strong.
They keep their people, but their people don't really even live by it. It look like everybody's on like the same level in the sense like they all get treated. Like everybody looks pretty happy. If you think about it.
I don't know.
They make it very, it seems like the land of, yeah, only if you're rich you can be here. It seems like an all rich party. All I know is that it's
fake.
Well,
and
I'm
so happy it was fake because Daenerys told. Okay.
Yeah.
The seven are gods of weakness and defeat. Pretty chains that the first men kindly put on after the Andals crushed them. Except in the Iron Islands. Since the Dawn Age, the Ironborn have followed the drowned god, who plucked fire from the sea and made us to reave and sack and carve our names in blood and song. When the Andals landed on the Iron Islands, they found a god who was father, warrior, and stranger, who took mother, maiden, and crone when he would, and held the smith in thrall. His priests are the drowned men, and ask the god to raise us from the sea as he was, harder and stronger. The Ironborn do not fear the bloodiest battles or the roughest waves, for the drowned god taught us long ago that what is dead may never die. When an Ironborn falls, we say the drowned god needed a strong oarsman and took him below to feast in the god's watery halls, attended by mermaids. But even in death, an Ironborn is a warrior. We fight against the storm god, who holds a castle in the clouds, and sends the winds to lure the Ironborn off course or wreck our ships. It's said my legendary ancestor, the Grey King, waged war upon the storm god for 1,000 years. With the drowned god's help, he slew the great sea dragon Naga and used her bones for his haul. After his death, the storm god tried to wash away any memory of this terrible foe, but his songs fill our halls to this day. It was the storm god who first blew the Andals to the Iron Islands, to subdue us and turn us from our faith. True, they conquered and killed our king. But in time, they forsook their septs for the shore, and their fat septons for the drowned men. The Andals came to us as conquerors. In the end, they drowned. The Ironborn are of the sea, as our god made us, and given to it as our god taught us. We do not fear the storm god's winds or his waves, but you should, for they bring us to you.
I'm done. That's so funny how they use the... That's so funny. I mean, this is quick, but it's funny how they use the storm as like protection, but at the same time, it's like it has its good and bad. Because they use it like, oh, the storm gods, we went to war with them, and they, you know, they brought evil to us and this and that. But in the end, the storm gods take away what we went against, and it's like because we're the... I don't know.
Well, I find it funny how they're called the Iron Islands, but it seems like water. It looked like they serve like the drowned god and stuff like that. It's so funny how it's called the Iron Islands, but I don't know. Like the name of the island and like what they actually do.
It should be called the Salt Islands.
I don't know, but I feel like they're so prideful and not serving the old gods and new ones, and they just do what they want.
And they basically rely on the sea to take away any, you know, like you said, very prideful. Who is this?
I don't know.
Right, I did not recognize that name.
That's what I was...
Holly the Pyromancer, the Alchemist
Google it real
Guild.
quick. Just to see what they look like.
Oh, him.
Let me see.
Remember him? Remember him? Remember the guy?
Not really.
He was with Tyrion.
Oh!
And he was basically making that stuff, the wildfire. And Tyrion was talking to him.
Okay, you're right. He popped up in the last...
Alright. That was
episode.
Yeah.
Dragons conquered the Seven Kingdoms, but to rule them, the Targaryens needed a less temperamental tool. When the great King Maegor saw the power of the Alchemist Guild, he blessed us with his patronage. In those days, we commonly transmuted metals and other wonders, but the king was most interested in our mastery of the substance, which those not of our order dub wildfire. A slight misnomer. To the uninitiated, the substance indeed seems uncontrollable. Water will not extinguish it, nor plate of steel repel it. Our order alone knows its secrets. In bare stone cells beneath the guild hall, our acolytes prepare the substance with utmost care and ancient magic. Apprentices then remove the jars to a secure storage. Overseeing its purity are the wisdoms, such as myself, who are adept in the alchemical mysteries. Should an acolyte prove unworthy and allow the substance to ignite, the ceilings are spelled to collapse and fill the room with sand. For once lit, only smothering or starvation will quench the fire. Many years did the Alchemist Guild serve the Targaryens faithfully, until we were beset on all sides by the envious, the Order of Maesters, who dismissed all learning but their own, and the charlatans who hucked green paint and worse in our names. After the unfortunate Prince Aerion Targaryen, drunk with wine, boasted that a draught of the substance would transmute him into a dragon, we lost our royal favor. Then came the wise King Aerys, second of his name. I was merely an acolyte when he restored our guild to its former glory. As had his great forefathers, he appreciated our secret arts, even naming Wisdom Rossart as Hand of the King. Together, they punished his enemies as befits a true Targaryen. Wow. During the War of the Usurper, I heard whispers that King Aerys had engaged our greatest wisdoms for an ultimate weapon against his foe. But sadly, King's Landing must have fallen before it could be used, and many of our wisdoms disappeared in the sack of the city. Victims of ignorance and envy, as ever, I'd wager. Yet our order perseveres, like the substance which grows ever more potent as it ages. We perfect our ancient arts in darkness, forgotten by the world. We are masters of the fire, but we live only to serve. All we need is the right spark.
That's so funny. Because everything that they're talking about happened in season 2. The right spark. He needed Tyrion. Tyrion was the spark that used the wildfire, or the Lannisters or whatever. Interesting. Backstory.
The East is plagued with mystics who claim many dread powers but prove only one, separating the foolish from their purses. Not so with the renowned warlocks of Karth. They demand a much dearer coin in return for their parlor tricks. Respect. Once, the warlocks truly were mighty, or so they would have us believe. I do not doubt they have many secrets. They are an old order, and one does not obtain a seat on the 13, the governing council of Karth, without making 12 of our most powerful citizens afraid to forbid it. Thankfully for Karth, the warlocks exert little influence in our politics. They rarely leave the confines of the House of the Undying, a pompous name, but, I admit, a strange and dark tower. It is said that none who enter ever leave. Of course, since there are no visible doors, I have to believe none ever enter either.
Yo, that's so funny, bro. Dang. We need to start watching this before.
I wager we do not have to imagine much. They read dusty scrolls detailing their lost glory. They sip shade of the evening, a foul concoction brewed from the nearby trees, until their lips turn blue, the better to frighten children and the ignorant. Stewing in their fantasies like an old soldier who drinks alone so no one may challenge their prowess. Whatever the warlocks may wish, their magic, like all magic, is dead in the world, if it ever existed. Though, one does hear strange whispers of late. Glass candles that have been cold for 100 years, now burning. Ghost grass, found far from the lands of the shadow. A Khalasar led by a woman with 3 heads. Traders' nonsense, most likely. But should the warlock's vaunted magic ever return, that would be a dangerous day for Karth. I shall need to keep my eyes on them. Indeed.
Interesting. Yo, y'all, I'm sorry, but I'm telling you, we need to watch these lores in history before it starts, because how that just ended too, wow. It just wraps everything up that happened. It would have had us questioning like, or talking about it like, interesting. Qarth, who's that? What's the Kath people? Interesting. And then when we saw it all play, I would have been like,
Okay, so I think it's not gonna. I mean, I feel like it does kind of spoil, but not really.
It does, but it doesn't. I don't know. We don't understand it.
Like, it's not that though. It's not that, because in the show they kind of explain it. I feel like this is just a more in-depth review, because they're not gonna do all that dialogue while we're watching it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, guys, that was the Game of Thrones Season 2 lore and history. Talked a lot about it, gave y'all our thoughts, and hopefully you enjoyed our reaction. I'm getting a bit tired, but I'm gonna pull through. It's not because it was boring, it was just tiring,
Long day.
Right. So, hope you enjoy. And we will be getting to Season 3, or, the lore of Season 3. Whichever one we choose. But we will be seeing y'all
on the next one.
Perfect.